This is a great opportunity to kind of bring people together to talk about their marine science, their connection to the ocean, but also provide a lot of storytelling. I've been rocking with it since, I'll be real with you, I didn't start at 12 o'clock at night. I was asleep, but I did wake up around 8, 9 o'clock and kind of checked in. And I will say everybody that has came before me has definitely provided some gems, some very important information to live by, and some words of motivation. And so people that haven't checked out the last 20 hours, definitely after this is done, go back and check it out because it's been very, very powerful. So once again, my name is DeMarcus Robinson. I guess my background is I'm a chemical oceanographer. I got my started in marine science, really started in undergrad. And so a little bit about my background. And then as I talk about that, I have a cool science demonstration that I am going to set up, talking about ocean currents and the physics of the ocean, and kind of connect that to why ocean observation is important and why the work that NOAA and other federal agencies, when it comes to ocean observation, is important to our everyday life. And so for me, my work started at Florida A&M University, but before that, I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and so my connection to the ocean is just the Georgia Aquarium. So I remember in 2005 when the Georgia Aquarium was being built, and I think I was in elementary school or something like that, and it was a really amazing time to be able to go and see all this remarkable things. And I tell people that every year I go for my birthday because it's free, but I go and get to see how it's changed over time. And so for me, as a person in high school that really wants to do BIM, doesn't really want to do marine science, but very much interested in science. My favorite planet is Neptune. And so it's a kind of interesting to think about Neptune, ocean blue, and end up becoming a marine scientist. But once I got to my last year in high school, I was like, hey, I thought about it, and then I was like, I'd rather be in the band instead. And so I went to the number one HBCU in the world, Florida A&M University, and played in the number one band in the world, of March 100. And so from then I was like, okay, well, I'm at the university of my choice. This is my dream school since middle school, but I need to major in something. I need to do something. And I was kind of picking and choosing, changing my major because I was like, I like science. I don't want to do pre-med, don't want to be a doctor. I wanted to do research. And that's why I landed into the school environment. And as I started to kind of think about the last several events that have been happening over the last couple of months, I realized that my research and my interest in ocean science has definitely been in lockstep with NOAA since I was in undergrad. And so I started thinking about that because my interest in ocean science started with that. And so, FAM, you had a partnership with NOAA called I forgot what the acronym stands for, but it's ECSC. And during that time, I had two different internships. One was at USC with the GEM course. The CW doesn't exist anymore, but that got me introduced to marine microbiology. And then the diversity project was pretty much the part where it really was like, okay, this is what I could do for a career. And that was a great opportunity for me to go out to UCLA, go to Moorea French Polynesia, and do all this coral reef research. And this is where I also met Dr. Moore and Dr. Gaines before BIMS. And they've been instrumental in terms of my growth and watch them do all this amazing stuff. And the people that I was with, my cohort, we still stay connected to this day. And so at that moment is where I decided I wanted to be an oceanographer, because I realized like marine biology was great, but I really wasn't as interested into the interactions between species or species and the environment. I really wanted to think about things globally or holistically. And when I was there, was a guy named Sinai, and he was a physical oceanographer. And we was chatting. He was like, you got to do calculus. Come with me. I was like, I don't want to do calculus. But he was like, you got to do it if you want to be an oceanographer. So I had to suck it up and kind of try my best. And then that's what kind of propelled me to grad school. And I was like, okay, I really want to do oceanography, really want to do chemistry, really wanted to be in the ocean. And that provided a whole lot of experiences from diving at Alvin, just like Dr. Jones and Dr. Wright, along with being able to do deep sea research and also eventually becoming a Knauss Fellow. And so this is my second instance of being locked in step with NOAA, and that opportunity provided me to get involved in ocean policy And so I worked at the White House Council of Environmental Quality, where a lot of initiatives like 30 by 30 and the work with DC mining, a lot of things that people had talked about beforehand, a lot of that was happening under that administration. I had the opportunity to learn and engage with all these folks. Along that time, I started kind of trying to understand who I am as a scientist, as a person. And I really started diving into marine science education or science communication. And it's very interesting because I put a comment in the chat not too long ago saying that some scientists consider science communication and going into policy as like bad words at that time. But now you kind of see a shift where you need science policy, you need science communication, you need social science for us to navigate through this very difficult time. And for me, it was okay, well, I really want to get engaged in science communication. And so I started to do like things like this. And so I will talk about this and physical oceanography in a second. But essentially, I was like, this is very interesting. I still want to engage in this, still want to do research. Eventually, I ended up now being in my position as a postdoc with NOAA. So this is my third instance with NOAA. Working down here at the Atlantic Oceanographic Meteorological Laboratory, or AOML. Their significance is doing oceanography and meteorology, but they're really play an instrumental part in hurricane research. And when it comes to forecasting, understanding hurricanes, they're a part of the hurricane hunters and operate through that. And so for me, I get to kind of have that opportunity to see why the work is important more than just reading it. And as I step in this position, I do want to say thank you to all the people that are in the federal service, people that had the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of giants and put their all into the work that has progressed us to this point at this point now. So thank you for the people that are still working, and so also thank you to the people who unfortunately had a early leave, but hopefully that the work of ocean science still matters for you. I want to say thank you to the folks still in the undergrad, still in grad school. Thank you for the people that are still doing research. Still, thank you for the people that are in nonprofit space advocating for the work for conservation of marine science, because without you, a lot of this stuff wouldn't happen. And one of the things that I had said today in the meeting was that, you know, once we stop doing this work, it gives the other people justification to stop funding and stop seeing the reason why we do this. And so, and I had to push myself for this too, saying, you know, the work matters, continue doing the work, even if it seems like it's daunting, continue. And part of that importance of oceanography and ocean science is kind of with science communication, which is this. And so what I have here is a tub. And so backstory, during COVID-ish, you was stuck at the house, was really nothing to do. And one of the things that had happened during COVID was the fact that there was this thing called kitchen oceanography that was going around. So a physical oceanographer out in, I think, Germany or Norway, she's developed these very interesting ways to get engaged in ocean science by doing all these amazing demonstrations of which you can do it at your house or your kitchen. And at that time, it really wasn't so much for like the public so much, because we were all at our house, people were just doing it. And it was a challenge to do 30 days of this. It was 30 experiments that you can do each day. And so if you want to check it out, it's called Kitchen Oceanography. And one of my favorite ones is the overturning circulation. I also use it as Mediterranean circulation. And so as I do this demonstration, I'll tell you what I have. I'll also mention why ocean observation is important and why we need to continue the advocacy around it. And so what do I have here? I have a tub. So you should have a tub in your house. If you don't, I don't know how you store food, but hopefully it works out. And then I have this clay. This clay I got was Model Magic. I really like it because it doesn't really crust up or get too hard. And so I have these, and then see if I can change alpha blur. All right, cool. Can you guys see the, yeah. And so with that, I have this top. And so what I did essentially was put the clay inside of it and kind of create two reservoirs. One reservoir will be for salt water and one other reservoir will be for a little bit fresh. And so I'm gonna kind of adjust this so that you guys can get a better visualization. I also have my phone camera over there, but as we're doing this, I don't also want to mess it up. And so what I have here is a pitcher. It's full of blue water. It's very salty. And so why is it salty? So one thing about the ocean is that what causes ocean currents, what allows us to get from, if you're an animal, if you're some type of chemical element, if you're a type of parcel of water, whatever it is, how do you get from A to B is ocean currents. But how do we have ocean currents? It's really because of really three things you can sum it up to. It's the rotation of the Earth. So a big part of that rotation is the Coriolis effect. It's the reason why we have storms, the reason why we have hurricanes, reason why we have the Gulf Stream that curves up the eastern border and goes all the way up to the North Atlantic. The second reason is due to density or temperature and salinity. And so there's different parts of the ocean has different densities. In your poles in the Arctic and Southern Ocean tends to be very dense because it's close to ice sheets, and you have this colder water holds things a little bit more, and so you have more area that has very saline essentially. And usually your tropics, because it's at the equator, you have more evaporation. That water is a little bit more fresher, and so it's less dense. And so if you think about the rotation along with the salinity and the temperature, you start to have different water masses that go from the south all the way up to the north, southern ocean, all the way to the North Atlantic and back and forth. And this kind of is part of the big instance of the ocean conveyor belt. And this is kind of one of my favorite physical oceanography concepts. Essentially, it's a highway connected of essentially the ocean. Everything drains down to the Southern Ocean, and everything leaves from the Southern Ocean and travels to the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean and Indian Ocean. And essentially, we're all connected in that same manner as well. And so it's kind of one of my favorite concepts. A little bit nerding out, but it's all good because we're all nerds in some way, fashion. So essentially, you can pour your very, very highly dense, really messing up the words right now. So I had this in the refrigerator with ice, so it's really, really cold. Hopefully we can get to the top. If not, we gotta improvise. And it looks like we might have to improvise, but it's all good. And the third thing, I guess I said three things. One other thing is because Earth is not flat. Earth is not flat, but it's not smooth as well. Essentially, we live on the geoid, and so there's bumps, there's grooves, there's canyons, there's basins, there's seamounts. These are this topography that's there, the bathymetry that's there. And so this gives kind of the ocean is characteristic in terms of having pockets of dense matter, or lighter matter, or even organisms that live in certain areas to kind of thrive in that. And so when we think about ocean observation, it's important because it allows us to understand what is happening in the ocean. It's like if you go to the doctor's office and you want to understand if you're sick or not, same thing, right? And so here I have some fresh water. I'm going to pour it here. And one of the things that's pretty interesting about ocean observation, at least in the United States, we have several organizations that deal with ocean observation. We have academic institutions, nonprofits, and we have the federal government. And it's more than just NOAA, but NOAA is the really head honcho. And the interesting part of NOAA is that they are in the Department of Commerce. And some people ask, like, why are they in the Department of Commerce? They do ocean stuff. That doesn't make sense. Commerce is dealing with trade and ships. Well, essentially, ships go from one place to the next. They're on these ocean avenues, these ocean ways, and you're trading resources. And essentially, if you want to trade resources on the ocean, or you're going to collect resources, so fish or any other aspect, you need some aspects to observe this. And so as we're in this paradigm shift of what's happening with science, it's also very important that we think about, what would happen if we don't have those abilities to observe the ocean. And this density experiment I'm gonna try to do, hopefully it works out, because I may have messed up, but we're gonna try it out and see what happens. Actually, let me get some of this out. And one thing about science experiments and doing research It sometimes comes out right, sometimes it comes out wrong, but as long as you're having fun, that's all that matters now. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're good on that part. And I'm just going to use a knife and make a cover. So what's supposed to happen, hopefully, is that you'll see the flow of heavy, dense water go into the bottom like this. And so, like I had said earlier, and you can kind of see it, I'm gonna try to arrange it in a way that you can kind of see it a little bit better. You can kind of see it, but essentially the deep blue that you can see is kind of it's spreading out on the surface, on the bottom of the seafloor. And this has to do with the fact that this water is colder, it's much denser, and it's going to essentially flood the bottom first because it's heavier and this water is very light, it's not as salty. At the same time, this is a physical oceanography concept, this is a concept of steady state. It's very straightforward. So if you have things going in, things have to come out. So you have this blue water mass coming in. Ideally, if you don't have the thing coming out, it will fill up. So if you think about a bathtub, if I pour water or take a shower, if I don't have the drain, it's going to fill up and spill over. How does the earth prevent this and how does this happen is, well, how does it not happen is that you have a return flow. And this is what's happening at the surface. You can't quite see it, but it's really cool because you have these spirals that form. And the reason why I show that is because when we think about the transfer and the movement of water masses, they're going over these hills, these valleys, because of the geoid. It's going over all these areas. Granted, we don't have the rotation itself, but it is essentially forming the currents we have. And when we think about currents, it's transferring heat, momentum, chemistry from the Southern Ocean to the North Atlantic or wherever you're going. And if you're somebody that works with hurricanes, you want to understand how does these water masses change over time? How are various, I wish you can see it better on this camera, but it's really a huge stark difference between the fresh and the blue water at the bottom. But essentially, if you're somebody that's a hurricane forecaster, you want to understand everything dealing with the ocean itself. And so for me, I had a great opportunity to actually talk with the hurricane hunters, and they were telling me about some of the cool, amazing stuff they have. And part of that was understanding about the ocean. And at the same time, we kind of have a lot of instances where data is being stolen, repositories are being deleted. And the question of is this important or not is being dealt with other folks. And so we have to constantly remind ourselves that even the smallest detail of things that may not seem like it's connected to the grander scheme, it really is. And we have to paint that picture, and we have to communicate that picture. And so this is why I want to present this experiment, because not only is a cool experiment, I think it's cool, but really show even some of the most basic concepts of just pouring water into a pan has implications to what is actually happening in the ocean itself, right? And it has implications of understanding why these processes happens, and also why it's important to understand why these processes are happening. And so as we think about, as we having these conversations about ocean science and some of the things that are happening, just have to remind ourselves that we are all, no one all in this together, and everything that you do matters. Every instance. So if you're going out there and you're understanding how blue crabs are such a living in the ecosystem, well, that's part of the ecosystem itself, but it may be important for somebody that's a fisherman or somebody that is understanding these dynamics, these trophic level dynamics. And if you're somebody that's a climate scientist, you may want to understand, you know, how are these ecosystems changing over time. But if you're somebody that wants to understand how has these organisms' evolution changed over time, you can look at, well, how has the environment that the organism is in, what are the things that are contributing to either its growth, its loss. And for us to do that, we have to monitor, we have to observe, we have to have all these data sets. The big push to AI is a little bit of a bigger jump than what we have in ocean science, because our data sets, depending on where you are, can be very, very detailed, or it could be just very rough, but enough to kind of have an idea. And so we have to remember that, you know, as we're trying to push it's weird. It's really weird. You're trying to push to something that is a larger development while also backscaling everything else that's the foundation to that. So what I mean is to push the AI and machine learning at the same time, not having enough data repositories or data sets or somebody to do observations or anything of that matter. And so you're kind of missing a gap along with data not being quite organized amongst different regimes that have different types of data sets. And so that's something we also have to remind ourselves is that the gap between not having all the data and this bigger gap to kind of fill it in still needs people to do the observation, do the science. And this is where communicating your work, your values, what you care about, to your elected officials, to your community members, to people that do ocean science, and people that do advocacy so they can understand why this is important, right? So if you're somebody in Apalachicola Bay and you're doing oyster restoration, right? And oysters are very important for water quality and cleaning the environment. And somebody just says, hey, your science is not important, we'll take it away. Well, then that water quality work impacts everybody that is in the Gulf of Mexico, for instance. And so the question is okay, well, what do you need in terms of kind of replacing that? And in some cases, or in this case, there isn't no conversation replacing that. And so we have to definitely advocate. We also have to connect with different people, even people that may not have the same knowledge and ideology and also experience, right? So if you're somebody that does fishery science, very important to understand how fishermen go out and fish. Why, what are some things that are barriers for them to go catch? So one day I was in a lift and I had the opportunity to talk to a guy. Very interesting. We had different political views, but we talked about fish eventually. And he had an issue with fish nets. And so he was going on a rant about how I don't know if it was the state government or federal government, but they changed the fish net size that essentially end up killing a fish species instead of saving the fish species. So he was upset about that. And as he started telling me this, and I kind of got to talk to his folks, kind of understanding that, and then brought it to people that were a little bit more knowledgeable. And it was like, yeah, we understand that's happening. This is something that's a mistake. And so being able to kind of work together and understand where there's dynamics, where there's a misplace in that is very important. And so I know I have 30 minutes left. I went through this a little bit faster than I thought. I am open to questions for the next 30 minutes. I could talk about anything else of anything that's cool. I don't know. If there's anything. I guess I'll talk about something. I do want to talk about one thing that's been on my mind for a very long time is trying to keep people engaged in marine science and keep people engaged in different activities. So I had previously mentioned that I'm part of the Center for Coastal Marine Ecosystem. It is essentially part of a NOAA cooperative institute, but it's also partnered up with other institutions. And one of the things that's been on my mind for a very long time is consistently getting people to stay engaged and stay interested while things are kind of just, I don't know, it's every day's a mystery. And the thing that I kind of came around that, and as I'm still mulling this over, is that the things to kind of you have to think about if you're somebody that's listening is a couple things, right? From someone like me to even your supervisor or your boss, they don't know what tomorrow will look like, or even next week or next month. And part of that does provide a certain aspect of uncertainty, but part of that is a way to think about, okay, well, if there's so much uncertainty, what can I do today so that I could be prepared for next week or next month? And as I start thinking about that, putting myself as a student and even somebody that's now on the job market, but also if I was a student, it's like, what do I do to prepare for that? And these are things I would do. Number one, I would build yourself up so that it's your brand. So a lot of people say, you got to build your brand up, do all this cool stuff. And I agree. But if you work on yourself and you take your time out to understand your difficulties, things that you can work better at, things that you're really good at, and you take pictures and videos, and you really promote it in a way, then that becomes your brand. And that's something that I didn't really realize until I started putting things together. And started saying, okay, I'm really good at this, good at that. And part of that was something that I had to take back and say, well, I wrote down on a sheet of paper, especially after I defended. It's like, what are you good at? What are you bad at? What do you need help with? What can you help somebody else with? What do you see yourself, weirdly, I hate this question, but what do you see yourself in 5 years? In 6 months, what do you want to do differently so that today, 6 months from now, you won't feel like, oh, I wish I would have done that 6 months before. And I wrote all that out, wrote it, answered it, and I was like, let me start working on these things. As we're in this weird environment where all these things are happening, you have to really definitely get into the aspect of understanding what is needed and what do I need to do next. And so there's a big push to do machine learning and environmental DNA, and there's a big push to do thinking about systems in terms of holistic thinking. There's still the interest in indigenous and tribal ecological knowledge. And so if you're somebody that's trying to navigate it, what are the areas that I need to be in so that you can be the most powerful, not most powerful, but the most helpful, but also be in an area where it's like, okay, well, regardless of what's going to happen, we might be okay. Secondly, was really diving into your network. And so part of that is who knows what and where do I need to go, right? So there's a third part of the saying is it's not what you know, it's not about who you know, but it's about who knows you. And so it's important that as you're in these spaces, these awkward spaces, that you essentially kind of get outside of your comfort zone. And I mean, you're already outside of your comfort zone, but get more outside and introduce yourself, talk to people, talk about science. You'll realize that even though people may give you weird looks, there's some commonality that you can kind of come up to, and then those people become part of your network. Tap into your network, your university. One thing that I really wish I did when I was at UCLA was tap into the UCLA network. But UCLA has its things. And so I was just more so dealing with trying to kind of navigate grad school. And so definitely tap into this network, this huge network that you've seen. I think over 24 people have came here today to kind of give a presentation about their aspect of marine science and what brings them there, but that is part of your network. So tap into those amazing people. And thirdly is be open-minded. Things are being taken away, things are still there. Be open-minded to things that you would have said no to before. And so like, if you're not interested in policy, try it out. You may find that there may be some commonality that you can put yourself into to understand what is happening. If you're not interested in GIS or coding, try it out, right? Try to see how can you connect your work to that. Being open to different opportunities will not only broaden your network, but also broaden your experiences. And I think those are the kind of things that I would definitely jump on when it comes to trying to navigate this very weird time. And like I said, I don't have the answers to it. Nobody else really has all the answers, but you have to kind of start and continue somewhere. Because like I said previously, once you stop, it gives them justification not to continue, not to fund your work, and not to care. I have a question. Have you ever thought about the overlap between D9 and marine science? Most definitely. For the people that don't know what D9 is, it stands for Divine Nine. So here in the United States, we have Black Greek letter organizations. I'm not about to go through the whole list because I don't want to be on Greek shenanigans because I forgot somebody. But essentially, it's a organization that brings people together. It's a service organization. And the question relates to how do you overlap between D9 and marine science. I think the nice part of that is that each organization has programs with Phi Beta Sigma, for instance, which I'm a member of. We have a partnership with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Granted, I haven't been quite engaged in the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, but the work that they do with some of the Sigma Betas, which are the little kids, is very important. So you can definitely overlap between marine science, fish and wildlife, and that partnership with Phi Beta Sigma. A lot of organizations stands up different groups to promote businesses, and so promoting Black businesses that do marine science, that does conservation, that does other work around that, and having them to be highlighted in these regional or state meetings or even these national meetings would be very important, because it allows the voices that we have here, the small collectives, to kind of be branched out to the rest of the Black diaspora and community that's there. What else? Any more questions? Okay, cool. And so that's kind of where I would make that connection. That's there. I've thought about that as well. I just haven't acted on it, but I think it'll be a great opportunity to kind of span out Black marine science, or any Black and ocean marine science type of organization, into these other spaces, so people can understand the value. For instance, my dad is also a member of Phi Beta Sigma. I didn't plan it out to be legacy; it just happened like that. But he had met BIMS at yeah, because my whole family went out there. But he had met BIMS at out in New Orleans for the Essence Fest, and they came up and they met with everybody at BIMS, and so he had texted me the next day. Said, I want to do Marines. I want to do scuba diving. I was like, yeah, you should do it. And so he's been trying to get into scuba diving classes up in Atlanta. And I told him, I sent him some links. And then I have a little nephew who is also interested in marine science, who is 7, forgive me. And so he's very interested in science. He only wants science stuff for Christmas, which makes my life a lot easier, but also a lot harder, because I gotta keep making it better each year. So this year I might do a telescope. I probably should have said that on a live, but it's okay. And so trying to kind of, and so being fact that he got interested, along with some of my prophytes that are big people that are interested in marine science, I think there's an avenue to kind of connect that. Is there any more questions? I wish I had more science experiments. I had another one that I wanted to do called Salt Fingers. Can you tell us more about your experience with Alvin and how other folks get involved? All right, yeah, most definitely. And so in 2023, I accidentally got on Alvin. So the story behind that was that part of my PhD, I had the cool opportunity to go and be on the research vessel Atlantis. And I have a cool video that I'm probably not going to show just because I don't want it to mess up the feed. But it was kind of an accident, because when we first, so this experiment was supposed to be a 2-year experiment in 2019 and 2020, but COVID happened. And so we had to keep delaying it. And over time, the various instruments that we needed weren't there. So the remotely operated vehicle, Jason, that was in Hawaii at the time. And we started thinking about different ways to do marine science, either having 2 ships to go out and we just cross ships each time, or using somebody else's ROV, and all that stuff just didn't work out. And eventually, I think NSF and my advisor was like, hey, how about you guys use ROV? HO Alvin, essentially. And so at first it was kind of like, oh, this sounds cool. Sounds expensive, because I think it's $10,000 a day. And but eventually it was like, well, this is the only option. There's some slight drawbacks for using Alvin, just because it's you go down for a couple hours, you come back up, so you can't do like a 24-hour sampling. You have to really do on a short time scale or time interval. But overall, we was like, this is our only option. Let's do it, right? And so at the time, I was doing my Knauss Fellowship, and I knew that our cruise was in the summer. So I was like, all right, well, I flew back out, and we were having meetings with Alvin, because we needed to know where, as we were in the submarine, we needed to also know, like, where we're going to, where we're sampling, what's the conditions, blah, blah, blah. And so we get onto Atlantis, and I think, well, even before then, we're prepping to get on Atlantis. It's like several days out. And this is the same week that the, the submarine that imploded, that happened on a Wednesday, and we were supposed to leave on a Friday. And so right then, when that happened, we were kind of like second guessing, like, oh wow. At least for me, I was like, wow, this is really tough stuff. And so I get to San Diego on a Friday, and we should leave out Friday, Saturday. And I know that I go in on Sunday. And so ironically, the same guys that were operating Alvin were some of the same guys that had operated that submarine in the past. And so you could see kind of like their emotions on their face, but they're not being as, forward. But since this has happened within the time frame of 3 or 4 days, there was some seriousness in terms of, safety, and preparedness and watching what you say and things like that. And so for me, eventually my nerves calmed down because I've known about Alvin for a while. I knew that it had really impeccable safety standards. I was like, well, I'm going in there, and I pray that we come back up. And so 3 or 4 dives happened before I got on. It's a Sunday. Get up in the morning, around 8 o'clock in the morning, and before we got in Alvin, we all had a science meeting. And so in the science meeting, what would happen is that the people that went the day before, that would come in and say, hey, we went to this transept, we collected this, we saw this. So if y'all pass this transept, go over there and sample. The reason why we had these consistent science meetings is that if you had a remotely operated vehicle like Jason, you're all essentially together in a container box. You're saying, oh, there's a sample here, a sample there. So that communication was easier. But once you're in Alvin, there is still slight communication with the ship, but it's more so for directions and whatnot, not really so for, oh, go sample here, sample there. And then also the people in the ship, they can't see what's happening in Alvin. Only people that are in Alvin can see what's happening essentially on the live feed. And so we constantly had these science meetings. So we had our science meeting in the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. And part of that was, DeMarcus, you're going out twice. The first time you'll be somebody that's sitting on the port side. So I think that's the right side, and you're just taking notes, science, whatever. Second time you'll be the science lead. So I was like, all right, cool. So I went down. The first person I went with was Dave Valentine. If you're familiar with Dave Valentine, he's kind of famous for the whole science relating to deep water horizon, but also recently found a DDT oil spill, DDT barrels out in Southern California. And so if you're interested in DDT work or anything relating to that, definitely check that out. They have a movie that just premiered called Out of Plain Sight, really good movie. But essentially, he was somebody that I was diving with. He was the science lead. It was me. So before we started, the day before we did our training, so you go inside of Alvin. I always tell people, you put your hands out. That is about the size of Alvin. So it's very small. It's a 3-person sub. So you have a person to the right, you have a person that's in the middle who is the captain, you have a person to your left. And so you're touching toes, you're very close. And if you have to use the bathroom, you have this red tub. And so you just if you had to do number one, just do number one there. If you had to do number two, you just gonna have to pray that we come back up in time. And so we do these safety trainings, essentially reassuring that if anything happens, there's always a duplicate. So there's something to turn on, something to turn off. They showed us what happens. You turn this on, turn that on. If the captain is incapacitated, this is what you should do. This is how you talk to the people at the ship. So we were like, okay, cool, with the rest safety training. And when you're preparing to get on Alvin, like around 9 o'clock, we started to kind of do the prep. And for us, we had to be down there for 8 hours. And so reason why is because we wanted to conserve battery. So we had to be down there for 8 hours. And so you had to take your shoes off before you get on there. So you get in there, it's really cold, and it's really cramped. And eventually they close the lid. And once they close the lid, I was kind of like, we're really about to go into this. And so, of course, I'm praying and, and we're just kind of talking it out. And the crane, the winch lifts the Alvin up and it puts it in the ocean. And then we started descent. Our descent took probably 20 minutes. And so immediately you see the light out the ocean just go. And if you turn off the lights off the submarine, you start to see different bioluminescence that are happening in the ocean. It's really beautiful. And where we were at, we was in the Santa Barbara Basin. That is about, the deepest depth is about 500 meters. And so our descent was very short. And so by the time we hit the bottom, or very close, we are essentially seeing really our sample area is very flat. Because what we're really understanding is 2 things: the geochemistry, the chemistry of the sediment was very important in this area because this area in the ocean goes to anoxic. So really no zero, no oxygen. And secondly, he was very interested in the microbial mat communities that were lying on the seafloor. They were very important for hydrogen sulfide and sulfate oxidation, sulfate reduction and sulfide oxidation, and all these chemical processes mediated by microbes. And so we're out there, we're also out there looking for cool stuff. And so we're out there, and I kind of got scared at one point, and I tell this story now because it's been some years. The captain accidentally flipped the wrong switch, and the switch he flipped was the off switch. And once he did that, like, you didn't feel that we hit the sediment because it was very flat. And I look at Dave's face, he looks at me, he's ghostly white. And I'm like, oh snap. And so he turns it back on, I look outside the porthole, and you see this huge skid mark going all the way down. And so we're checking in, and people on the land is like, yo, what happened? It's like, yo, we just pressed wrong button. I was like, man, please just let me get out alive. And so we continue on. Luckily, there was no damage. We go and sample. And so we have these push cores. We go and sample at different areas, and we put them back on this thing called elevator. This elevator contraption is a really cool instrument. You dump it in the ocean. It has these little buoyancy things at the top, and it sinks all the way down. And then once you want your samples come up, you press this little puller, this lever, and it goes back up. And so you put your samples there, it goes back up, so you don't have to carry it on out. So we're down there for 8 hours. I had to go to the bathroom, of course. And so I had a little red container, and I did my thing. Like I said, very cramped space. And then we come back up, and they take the Alvin and put it on back on deck. You come back down and do the whole celebration. And then I went down a second time. This time I was the lead, and I had somebody else with us. And as they're writing stuff down and looking at things, I'm saying, oh, we should sample there, we should sample there. At one point, I thought we saw this thing called a whale's fall. So when whales, they die, they decompose at the seafloor. And sometimes you can see a whole bunch of critters that go by. And what it actually was, it was like a huge, like a humongous tree that came out of nowhere. And so we kind of assumed that this tree, which was very interesting because they had all this stuff on it, that it came from the mudslides that happened in Southern California like months before because of the rain. And so we sampled that, we checked that out, take some cool pictures. And then we kind of go back up, and that was kind of our dive. Unfortunately, my dive, I didn't see all the cool stuff. Some people saw a little Dumbo octopus. Some people saw some sharks. I didn't really see anything, but I saw what I wanted to see, so I thought it was great. And so at that dive, I think there was a total and completion in terms of everybody is about 20. And it was a really cool experience to get by accident. To answer your second question, how others can get involved in Alvin, that is a tricky question. And it's really based off of who needs Alvin and why do they need Alvin for. So there's it's always like what tools is best for the job. So either you're going to use Alvin because you have Alvin, you can use it, or you can use a remotely operated vehicle because it's there. Ideally, Jason, for instance, can do a lot more. All of you, Jason, remotely operated vehicle. Jason can do a lot more than Alvin just because of some manipulations, and you can have longer bottom time, so you can kind of be down there for 24 hours if you really wanted to. If you don't really think about charging, but for Alvin, there's some limitations, mostly because of battery. So it can only be down there for a certain amount of time, come back up, and then has to recharge. But if people want to get involved, I would say if you're an undergrad going to grad school, I would look for people that do deep sea research or deep sea benthic ecology or deep sea work with methane seeps, because these are the people that are going to more than likely do Alvin, or they don't, they're going to be on a research vessel using a remotely operated vehicle. Also, since Alvin is a little bit more expensive than all the other instruments, the likelihood is kind of small, but it just really depends what's happening. Second option that you can do is that UNOLS, that stands for the, I don't remember what the U stands for, but it's National Laboratory, I think Oceanographic. It's UNOLS. I'm sorry with the acronyms. And so they have a listserv, and they send out lists like once a month of these are the research vessels that you can be on. These are the people who's running it, and these are the things that you'll be doing. So they just sent out a listserv for somebody. They needed somebody to go to the Arabian Sea to do some nitrogen oxide measurements. I don't think they were doing Alvin. They were on a different ship. I mean, I don't think they were doing Atlantis. They were on a different ship. So for them, they were doing something different, but being out on sea is really cool. The second thing about Alvin is always tied to Atlantis. So if there's somebody as a research professor that is predominantly using Atlantis, and all of Atlantis research work is out in the Pacific Ocean for the next couple years, I believe. And then it rotates on the East Coast, but right now it's been on the West Coast for the last, I don't know, 5 to 8 years. If somebody's out there using that, then there is a higher possibility of getting on Alvin. But it just goes back to like, what are you using it for? What is instrumentation? What is the purpose at the end of the day? But there are people that are using it. I have met somebody at AGU who went on the Alvin dive before I did. I can't think of his name. I think his name is, I feel like it started with a D, but he did the deepest science dive, I believe, in Alvin because they just did a test right beforehand. And so you can just kind of, and I think the best way to kind of get involved is if you just find people that do deep sea ocean exploration, honestly. Alvin is the only submarine that the United States has, I believe. I don't believe that, in terms of the type of work that's needed, I don't believe there is any other research submarine that's out there that is part of the, the ship fleet of things. But different countries and different institutions may have their own submarine. And so that's kind of how I would get into it. Next question is, can you talk about experiences in marine science community, the power of building relationships? The marine science community, my experience has been ups and downs. Ups because I really had a really good PhD advisor. Sometimes I don't really talk about it because I don't want to seem like, come off as different, because I've heard a lot of horror stories. And I have a lot of friends that are currently going through things. But I really had a good PhD advisor that not only showed me the ropes of geomicrobiology and geochemistry, but really kind of got me engaged in marine science and into her research community of folks, and allowed me to go to different experiences, like going to Denmark to do training from other people that are experts in the field and all these other amazing avenues. She was very much stickler on being precise, so I learned to be a little bit more detailed. But that experience, along with being in that lab, so my PhD advisor was Tina Troida, but being in that lab was really remarkable because I worked with a well-oiled machine of people who had their own research interests, but were also willing to help somebody out at the end of the day, and we were all in it together at the end of the day. And so being with my research group was really the ups, right? And part of those ups was interacting with other people in the marine science community. So being able to go to SoCal GeoBio, which is just the Southern California Ocean Biology and Chemistry Conference, to hang out with other people that do marine science related to ocean biology and chemistry. Being able to kind of go and do cool things at AGU, and really to kind of being able to explore different research ideas. So for instance, when I was in Denmark, just sent us out there to go get some training, I had left and went to another university and around the area, and there was this research around cable bacteria, and I was really interested at the time, and she wanted me to kind of get into it. So I was like, all right, let's go. And so I went up to the people who were publishing all the papers around it, and had a great opportunity to kind of learn from them, learn from the people at Unisense. And we talked about marine science, we talked about their journey, talked about my journey. Because honestly, as a Black person in marine science, especially a Black person in oceanography, especially Black person in oceanography doing geomicrobiology, is very, very much in their niche. There's not a lot of us out there. And in certain aspects of oceanography, there's not a lot of, like, we're not really heavily in the United States as a big communities of sorts. And so it's seeing me as, it's always a, how did you get here and what do you know? And I think for me, it kind of got to a point where once I understood the concepts, I understood like what it meant, then I kind of was a little bit slightly arrogant because I also felt that if you had something to say bad about me or my science, which I thought was pretty fine for the most part, that you had something negative to say about my advisors and co-advisors at that point. And so those were kind of those aspects. Some of the slightly negative aspects of being in marine science is kind of the same story that other people have said, is that there's sometimes that people that, you know, safeguard different, essentially doesn't allow you to be in different communities. Some people kind of perceive you in a different way or don't think that you know what you should know. And for me, I kind of just ignored that because I knew that there were people, regardless of your skin color, that they wanted the best for you, but also wanted the best for your career. And so for me, it was kind of important to stick with those people throughout those times, and those same people helped me matriculate and grow. The power of building relationships is really important because for me, along with other people, like I wouldn't be here by myself. I couldn't, the stuff that I know, things that I do, I didn't do that alone. I would never ever say that I've done that alone. It was always because somebody was looking out. It was always because somebody presented an opportunity. It was always because people knew who I was as a person, but also as a scientist, and also just knew my interests, that they would say, hey, DeMarcus, are you interested in this? Are you interested in that? Or just kind of pop me into some things. And I'm like, okay, this seems cool, right? And so part of that relationship building is kind of being your authentic self. I kind of think about it as if others can go do these other things and look like this, and you shouldn't hide who you are. And there will be people that will take you who you are each time. And so part of that is kind of the first instance is be yourself. Second instance is kind of like relying on people who've already went through this and having them say, hey, you know, this is a good avenue, check this out. Maybe if you do go over here, just understand these are the dynamics, and I had people to kind of show me the ropes of where to go. And then from that, I started to make my own connections. And a big part of that I do this boldly sometimes, and sometimes I have to check myself, is that I'm the type of person that if I really need to know something or I want information and I know that you have the information, I would just kind of go out and just kind of reach out, like, hey, send me an email, like, hey, I want to know about this, da, 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 da. And most times, nine times out of 10, people respond back and say, hey, yeah, you know, I think it'd be great, da, da, da. Like, for instance, I ran into the admiral at NOAA at AGU, and I was interested in decarbonization, this whole concept of transitioning from fossil fuel-based aspects of energy to more essentially electrification and other types of renewable resources. And so I was very interested in ships and decarbonization. And there was a NOAA meeting, and the admiral was there, and had already emailed him like a while ago. I was like, hey, like, what is happening in this space? And so I was at the meeting, and I kind of remembered his face and definitely remember his name. So when the meeting was over, we were about to transition to happy hour, all that stuff. So I'm walking outside, and it's kind of raining. So we're kind of outside. I see the admiral, and I think his possible second in command and his folks that are around him. And I just ran up to him. I said, hey, I didn't even introduce my name. I was like, hey, like, I'm interested in this. Da, 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 da. And so we just started having a conversation. And I know that me in the past would have never done that, but me being a person where number one, I'm a nice person, very genuine, but also I like learning, I like knowing. And I try to be that person, and so I'm not afraid to kind of go ask people about things. And from that, I've made a connection, and we kind of trade information. And so that was something where it's a little bit of elevated sense of things, but kind of getting outside of your comfort zone to speak to people. For instance, I had wrapped this up because I know I have 5 minutes. And like I said, in marine science, you're always in a environment where you're the only one of two, one of three. So I went to a schools meeting, which is the Southern California Ocean Observation Systems. It's part of the 8 or 9 IUs that NOAA runs, and they have regional centers. And so I went to a meeting, and I met some people, cool people, and I was kind of the only one. And one of the things that I purposely do all the time, and I'm glad that I do it, is that I purposely go up and ask a question. Now I try to make sure the question is very articulate, but I go up there and ask the question for 2 reasons: because I want to know the answer, but also show that, hey, we're here, we have something to say, we're just not sitting in the background twiddling our thumbs, right? We're not some DEI pick, we're not some, somebody that just got through the system, like we know what we're talking about. And so those have been in many instances where I was like, okay, I'm gonna go up to the mic and ask a question. And it gets answered. And after that, people say, oh, well, that person knows what you're talking about. Let me go and talk with them. And so I've done this, and that's something that's kind of been a little bit of my bread and butter, is that to be noticed and to get around, trying to go around and shake everybody's hand. If there's an opportunity where there's a large space of people and ask a question, ask it, because you shouldn't want to know more, but also ask it because you want to also be seen. People can see you and know that we're here at the end of the day. And so that is all for what I have for today. Thank you for sitting through my cool experiment. Thank you for sitting here throughout the 22 hours of listening to the amazing talks, and I really cheering for you in terms of the marine science work that you're doing, and looking forward to you doing some amazing work. What is your favorite moment with BIMS? My favorite moment was actually going to BIMS week. It was my first time going to BIMS week, because I don't think I logged in for the virtual. I think I did. I don't remember. But that was kind of my favorite time, just because being around a lot of people that I knew, a lot of people I've seen on social media. So being able to say, hey, I've seen you, we talk. And being around a lot of us is so that we can kind of create community, but also create collaborations and create a family, so that if we ever need to fall back or kind of like think about our next steps, is know that there are people that are here that have done it or are planning on doing it, and love to have you be involved. And so for me, I've been rocking with BIMS since really day one. I was on Twitter, and I liked the post and made a comment, and even been in the initial stages of doing the social media content and things like that. And so for me, I've seen BIMS grow from its small Twitter stages to now being on the big stage, international stage. And so for me, it's great for me to see that, but also be a part of that. And I've seen how BIMS have essentially cultivated people to come together. Because just like Dr. Wright had said, even before BIMS, there really wasn't a big thing of bringing us together. And so it was an ability to come together and think about these instances of marine science, our proximity to ocean science, our proximity to academia, and really think about our interests. And I will say that I met a lot of people, a lot of great people in BIMS, that I look forward to just, having continued relationships, friendships, but also collaborate. I would love to collaborate some science with you guys. But supporting BIMS is supporting yourself at the end of the day. Because without this community of network of people, and without the work that's being done, it really makes it hard for you as an individual to really trying to navigate a very difficult environment. Dr. Jones had talked about essentially a fish being in it. I'm paraphrasing really bad, but a fish being in bad water, right? Not because the fish is bad, but because the water is tainted. And BIMS essentially is the oyster in this tainted water, cleaning it up, but also sustaining us as fishies in this environment. And so supporting BIMS is supporting yourself and supporting people that come after you. That's one thing that is very important as you matriculate through marine science and this world of ocean science, is that as you kind of go up, make sure you bring other people with you and integrate them into BIMS and other Black and marine ocean science organizations, so that we can continue the mission and the work that's there, so that we can look 50 years later and say, these are things that have changed and things that have happened, and not let it be like 50 years before, when there was nothing that was there and people had to figure out for themselves. So thank you for the giants that we stand on. Definitely support BIMS, have your friends support BIMS. If you're part of an organization, have them, or a company, have them support BIMS, provide some type of match gifting. Certain companies do that. So definitely, if you're part of that, definitely do that. So that is the end of my hour. So thank you for hanging tight.